Hello and welcome to everybody who's tuning in over their lunch hour. This is our second Reopening Manitoba Town Hall event, and thanks to everyone who's joined us. Today's topic is the recovery of the local food and drink industry and some of the ongoing challenges that are faced by people who are working in the sector. I'm Eva Wozni. I'm a food, arts, and culture reporter for the Winnipeg Free Press, and I am joined today by my colleague and co-host, drinks writer, and literary editor, Ben Sigurdsson.
Yeah, and of course, we've got a great collection of folks we're going to talk to today. Two are here right now. We're hoping the third will pop on in a little bit. We've got Sean Jeffrey, the Executive Director and CEO of the Manitoba Restaurant and Food Services Association. Thank you very much for joining us, Sean. And we've got Melanie Foucault, co-owner of Preservation Hall Eatery and Wine Bar over on Empress near Polo Park, who should have some interesting insights, especially considering they opened during the pandemic. So we've got a whole host of questions to get to of our own that we want to get to, as well as a bunch of questions we had submitted from readers as well. So I'm going to throw it back to Eva to get the ball rolling, and we'll go from there.
Excellent. So the first question I want to start off with Burger Week, because that just ended, and I'm curious if these food festivals, of which there have been many this year, I'm curious if these have been beneficial for businesses during the pandemic, or if they're maybe adding a little bit extra stress to restaurants right now. So Melanie, if you don't mind kind of walking us through how the last 2 weeks have gone at Preservation Hall.
Well, there definitely was a great response to our Burger Week burger, and we definitely did see an increase in takeout orders, and it was great to see new guests in that hadn't maybe tried our food before and were being exposed to it for the first time. So that's one of the advantages to events like Burger Week for us. As a new restaurant, we're still trying to get our name out there and still trying to generate awareness for our restaurant. So it was very helpful in that regard. Now, on the flip side of that, the one challenge is because we did have so many takeout orders, unfortunately it did slow down the kitchen a little bit, and like most restaurants, we are finding that our guest demand is sort of outstripping our staffing abilities at times, and so it's a little bit of a challenge sort of trying to explain to the guests that are in-house why their food might be taking a little bit longer, because obviously they're not seeing all the takeout orders that are happening. So it's sort of a catch-22. Like it definitely had a lot of positives to it, but there were some drawbacks as well.
Sean, do you tend to get feedback from different eateries and what have you about events like this?
Absolutely. It's all we talk about. Yeah, so Burger Week has been around for a few years. It was the pioneer of the theme weeks. Now, theme weeks are becoming big, not just here in Manitoba, but across Canada. Burger Week, we had actually our first taco week, which was actually just in August there, where we worked with a local clothing company actually to start off another theme week. And what theme weeks do is it engages excitement in the industry, and excitement to try new places, excitement to try new things. And it really brings out those foodies that we would call the low users, and that would be 1 to 3 times per month. And it actually brings them up anywhere between 3 and 5 times per month, and it actually brings their engagement in the industry significantly higher. So whether it's Pizza Week or Pasta Week or Pizza or Taco Week or Burger Week, we find the engagement is quite monumental, just in getting people out that maybe haven't been out to a restaurant. And on top of that, it brings you out to a restaurant just like Preservation Hall. Check out a newer restaurant that maybe has some wild and exciting new burger thing to see what their atmosphere is like. And you actually will find that more customers will find their new favorite dining spot or their new Saturday night place that they want to go with family and friends that maybe is something different than what they've done in the past due to these theme weeks. And it is a great idea to be able to engage that excitement, especially while we're in recovery, which is just a monumental time for our industry. Recovery after 16 months of pandemic restrictions and hurtfulness, so to speak. What we've had to encounter during the COVID-19 is that having any excitement and bringing people back out to and engage in a restaurant is very monumental to keeping people back to the new normal, right? And that's what we're trying to get to. Just like Melanie said, there is obviously drawbacks to it. Obviously, it does engage a lot of takeout and delivery. It does provide a lot of stress, especially with pandemic restrictions in place. It brings more people into your restaurant, and we're actually having a pretty significant staffing shortage in our industry right now in Manitoba and across Canada. So, it does, put a lot of extra stress on our industry. But I think that the good outweighs the bad, and the simple fact that we are trying to engage people to come back out after the pandemic into that new normal, try new places, new things, and trying to get back to, pre-pandemic habits and things that they used to look really forward to.
Yeah, that all seems to make sense to me. And this week's Burger Week being 2 weeks, I thought maybe it might almost be like a double-edged sword. Like, it's good because you're getting these people in for 2 weeks, but at the same time, it's 2 weeks where the demand is up for pickup and delivery. The demand is up, when you might be having a staff shortage, and you seem to it sounds like, Melanie, and from the people you've talked to, Sean, that people seem to be sort of managing that relatively well.
I think that obviously some days are better than others and whatnot, but for the most part, I would say the majority of guests are fairly understanding and are tuned into the fact that there is, a special event that is drawing more people, that's going on. So, it's been okay. It's been okay. Like we all made it through. So, and it was so nice to see new faces in the restaurant. Like Sean was saying, it really does expose restaurants to places that they maybe have never been before, and then they come in, take a look at the menu, see the ambiance, and get a feel for the place. And hopefully come back.
Eva, do you want to take one, or I can take one? Whatever.
Yeah, I think you're up for the next question. But
am I? Okay, sorry. We do have a little bit of a thing that we did because we're not in the same place. We wanted to make sure we weren't stuttering and stopping and starting. We are back to indoor dining and drinks, and guests can now, even if there's a space for it, and if they have a mask, they can dance even if they want to, I guess. How are the current public health regulations, generally speaking, affecting operations? And with the loosening of the restrictions over the summer, what was it like as the onus of enforcement seemed to shift from the province back to businesses? That must have been a bit of a strain, I would think. I don't know, we didn't really have either of you in particular sort of lined up, so anyone who wants to jump in on this is just great.
I can start.
Sure.
So just Ben, the onus was always on the operator, was never on the province. Okay,
No.
So I want to make that very, very clear, that the province at no time did they ever take the onus of enforcement. It's been on the operator of a restaurant since day one of the pandemic. So, and the key thing to remember is that we're in almost 17 months of industry restrictions some way or another, right? And whether it's fully masked and fully vaccinated or 50% capacity, and any restrictions inside a restaurant is very monumental to its operation. The average restaurant in Manitoba makes about 4.3% profit. And so the profit margins inside of restaurants are very, very small. So anytime you restrict that ability to operate at a full, wide open capacity level operation, you're deteriorating that restaurant. So to say that the latest level of restrictions is a positive thing would be not farther from the truth. That any restrictions inside of restaurants is deteriorating them from the day they start. So we're seeing with this round especially a lot of COVID fatigue. So we're seeing a lot of people coming in and just pretty much at the end of their rope. A lot of COVID fatigue with the operators. Remember, our operators have been dealing with this for 17 months, opening, closing, hiring, and laying off staff, changing, filling up inventory, selling off inventory, changing, opening, closing their establishments. This is very trying on an industry that is trying to struggle right now, especially struggling to get new staff in their industry and retaining the staff that they have, because we're still competing with federal programs that are paying our staff to sit at home while we need them in our restaurants. And that's a very big point to make. So, we need to get back to a point, and this is moving forward together, to a point where operations like the industry, like the restaurant industry, can operate at a point where we're back to normal. And normal, because normal is the new normal, is not normal. All right, even the new normal has deterioration in it. So we need to get back to that sooner than later, because our operators are seeing, that debt load is rising. And at that profit margin that an average operator here in Manitoba makes, it is very hard to service that debt.
Agreed. I think one of the greatest challenges that we have found is not necessarily people not accepting the new restrictions as far as, people need to be double vaccinated in order to go to restaurants and that sort of thing. I think actually the majority of our guests are embracing that they now feel that this is a completely safe environment that is controlled. There's the 6-foot distancing and the masking when not at tables. So I think that there's a lot of guests that feel really comfortable. However, the greatest challenge that we find is just that the process at the front door, and how that slows down, the processing of guests as far as checking them in for reservations and seating them at their table. Even when we effectively space our reservations, we're finding that we're still having somewhat of a queue at the door, just for the physical amount of time that it takes to verify immunization status and that sort of thing. One of the other challenges, as well as a hospitality professional, is you want your restaurant to be a warm, welcoming, inviting place, for guests. And that the process of verifying immunization, we have found, has been a fairly stressful experience for maybe some elderly guests that are not as technologically savvy. They don't have their physical card yet. And, as much as you do your best to calm those nerves when there's a lineup of people and they're having trouble pulling up their QR code and that sort of thing, it is it pains you as an operator to see that stress and frustration on your guest's face, and that's the very first thing that happens to them when they walk through the door. That being said, we definitely don't want to see a 4th lockdown. And if this is what it takes to make sure that doesn't happen, then we're more than happy to embrace and support those initiatives, because we need to stay open moving forward.
And John Heim from Torque Brewing has just joined us. Thanks for being here, John. And maybe we'll extend that. Thanks for jumping in on the conversation about vaccination cards, because that's questions we've had from readers. So maybe we'll jump into that a little bit now. So John, maybe walk me through how customers and folks at Torque Brewing are kind of reacting or responding to having to show their vaccination status at the door.
So far, it's been very, very positive. I think people that are going out understand the rules. Before the double vax sort of implementation, we did have one customer who was defiantly not going to wear a mask and almost was looking to pick a fight, but our staff are sort of working through these different situations. I would say right now, when anyone enters the tap room, we actually scan them right away, so there's no sort of gray area where they were wondering who's been scanned or not. Additionally, during this, the LGA was able to extend patio licenses, so we have lots of safe space out in our parking lot right now, which people take advantage of, especially during this past summer. It was actually a bit of a relief to not have to put staff into situations where there might be confrontation. I think it was very, very helpful, and we were able to, so far, so good. I think everybody that is going out understands the double vax stuff.
Mm-hmm. And just to follow up on that, how are you, encouraging staff to deal with confrontations like that when they come up?
Well, they actually come up on a case-by-case situation, and usually there's a management part of the management team on staff, so it never gets to the point where it becomes an issue. But that being said, it may be in our future. I know certain restaurateurs like Jay over at Finn's, he's had some issues with folks being quite belligerent and going online and bashing them. And I think that those are the minority, but they tend to sometimes be the vocal minority. And we're all left sort of picking up the pieces on both the logic of why people have to go down that path. And we're all just trying to make a living. We're 18 months into this, and I'm sure everybody on this panel is taking advantage of every grant the government offered, every work share program, every loophole, every opportunity to keep the cash flow going and keep staff happy. So we're dealing with it on a case by case, and thankfully, touch wood, that it's not a regular occurrence.
Mm-hmm. And Sean, just from your members, how are folks generally feeling about the double vaccination requirement?
So I obviously, as the association, have the benefit of 500 restaurants replying to us and being able to get feedback from a significant amount. And I'll mirror that same thing. Obviously, in the majority of cases, it's been fine. I wouldn't say that it's gone off without a hook. I haven't said that it hasn't been, times where it's been negative. And just like Melanie said, is that, there's a significant time commitment in there. And I think it takes away from the simple fact of why people go out to restaurants, why people go out to eat. The reality is that we can make a steak at home, right? We go out to eat because of the environment, the atmosphere, the ability to go out and share time with family and friends. And when you get into an operation and you have staff that are customers that are agitated and that are causing, issues at the front, trying to do something that is mandated by the provincial government, and we have no choice but to follow, it can cause a negative atmosphere and ambiance to start off that evening, which kind of eliminates the fact why you went out in the first place, to get away, to break away from that daily grind, work, and be able to, de-stress and have some great food and drink. And so, we've definitely seen, just like John said, it's an uptick in that silent minority, where Manitobans are really come to the table and been, supported since day one. But that minority going and leaving negative reviews for restaurants, even though they haven't been there, calling restaurants and making reservations and not showing up, locking up seats that a customer who's a paying customer could sit in, and doing such a things like that and going to that next level it's been very disappointing, because the first 3 waves, we didn't see much of that. And it's just this last, and I talked about it previously about pandemic fatigue and how it's really tailed onto people. But there is not an industry that has more pandemic fatigue than ours. And so when that fatigue, it's hard to be sympathetic when we're going through the same thing and have been going through it at a monumental level during the last 18 months. And our staff are now having to deal with that 16, 17-year-old host and hostess having to deal with an irate customer just because they're trying to follow the rules. So, yeah, there's definitely been some challenges, but I have to say that, the way that we've been handling them, the way we've been, trying to really foster positivity around it and really having, the majority of the customers following through, for the most part, it's been positive.
I feel like it must be tough, to stay positive when, there are these shifts in regulations, dining in house dining is open again, it's closed again. The regulations are being rolled out, with like a couple days notice sort of tops. And I feel like more so than most industries, the food and drinks industry has really sort of struggled to keep up with those changes. Do you feel like the province has been, and health officials have been doing enough with enough time to sort of, in terms of communicating these shifting regulations? I'll sort of throw it out there to anyone, I guess.
I think that any operator would, of course, appreciate more notice. But I mean, it's part of the nature of the industry too. Like we're used to having to pivot and switch gears and problem solve on the fly. And so, while it's not ideal, it's not all that unexpected to us. And, as long as there is open communication happening, one of the things that I do have to commend the MRFA on is their timely release of emails as far as updates to any restrictions and how it pertains to the restaurant industry, different resources that we can take advantage of. So, obviously more time, more communication would be ideal, but I think that everybody's just kind of trying to do the best we can as we go along.
And John, maybe I'll throw that over to you as well, because you are sort of in a bit of a different situation in that you don't serve food on a regular basis, but you were made to serve food for a bit during the pandemic, during the early sort of changes in regulations. How did you find that experience, sort of having to pivot, into an area where you essentially don't really operate to begin with?
Well, I think in many cases as a tap room, we function with just snacks. So there isn't sort of that food chain of requirements for fresh food and fresh produce and having staff that are trained in the kitchen. That was a good thing. I could never figure out the reason why we had to serve food during that pandemic. It had to be available on site as well. It couldn't come in from like Skip or anything. So it was really kind of weird, but it helped the food trucks because all their festivals obviously were shut down and they were always looking for traffic. Tap rooms are a bit sketchy at the best of times and figuring out when you're going to be busy and when you're not. We're located over by the airport, so we're a bit more of an industrial destination. Like it's not very pedestrian, not like something like Leopold's and Academy. There's not a lot of walk-up stuff for us here. And with the hotels around the area, we used to rely on some foot traffic that came in for folks in the airport that wanted to get out of the hotel and just go for a walk and experience us. So I would say we were quite fortunate as far as, notifications for us. It wasn't a huge deal. We always watched with bated breath on any of the announcements that would come up, again, mostly because of, COVID fatigue and like, oh my God, we have to shut down again. Like we've turned over every stone we can and all the nickels are getting a little few and far to find. So I just think that, with the caseloads right now I think they're a little bit of an uptick, but I think that has a lot to do with going back to school and all kinds of different things that are going on. But we really don't hope there's a fourth wave. It's going to be rough. Some of the restaurants that we work with that were great customers of ours have shuttered, like they're not opening again. I think the second wave probably was the last kick to the shins, and that third one was just, yeah, they're going to do the Sally Struthers Matchbox career thing. Try to figure out, TV VCR repair and all that stuff that used to be. But as far as like a tap room is concerned and the food trucks, yeah, we were able to just pull the pin fairly quickly. We're fortunate that we do have packaging. So when people stopped coming to the tap room, we were able to channel them to liquor marts and vendors, at least for pickup. And we launched a home delivery almost overnight last March 19th, I think.
Right. And then, of course, restaurants were then also able to start selling, beer, wine, cocktails, and what have you, from on-site via delivery and stuff, which Sean must have been that must have been a great thing to have come to fruition, I would think.
Yeah, so the delivery of alcohol, sealed products, so beer and wine, no cocktails.
Right, you're right.
Yeah, so sealed products. We started this conversation on government, and so this is a perfect tail into government because at the start of the pandemic, we were the only province in Canada to have tabled legislation for delivery of alcohol from restaurants and licensed facilities. We're the only province in Canada with tabled legislation, which means it was in the House just waiting for its second and third reading in order to be passed for legislation. Yet we were the second last province to have that type of delivery model implemented, which was very disappointing because it cost months and months of lost revenue for an industry that really needed it. Guys like John to be able to sell his wares through delivery and Melanie to be able to sell it through her restaurant, that was very disappointing. And we made it very clear that we were very disappointed in that environment. And it actually took a meeting with the premier in order to be able to get that moved forward quickly because we were last to the party on that. Provinces, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia were all delivering alcohol through restaurants far before we were. So, and they didn't have any table legislation. They just did it through their Emergency Measures Act. So, yeah, but at the end though, we're seeing about 15%. I think the national average is about 15% of delivery going out has alcohol on it. So that's a nice indicator of getting that out. Obviously taking consideration that cost a restaurant to do that because these third-party delivery services do not work for free. But it was definitely a help when we needed it at the beginning of the pandemic.
One of the challenges that we found though with the liquor delivery option is the LGCA regulated that anything that you were selling for delivery or takeout, if you had it on your regular menu, you had to offer it at the exact same price, which I mean, everybody knows that a retail markup and a restaurant markup are oftentimes two very different things. Because of course, in a restaurant, you are paying for the staff and the overhead and all that sort of thing. And so we actually didn't find that, there was a huge uptick as far as liquor sales, for the simple fact that if you could buy, a can of Torque beer at the liquor store for, maybe 1/3 the price, why would you buy it from the restaurant? And it's just, nature of the beast. So that was one thing where it was nice to be able to have that option. But because of that pricing where you discount it or offer it at a reduced cost, we didn't see it as much takers on that as we would have liked to have seen.
And just moving on and kind of back to something that was discussed previously by folks, I want to talk a little bit about the staffing challenges that you guys have experienced getting enough kitchen and service staff back into restaurants with reopening. So when it comes to staffing, what do you think is contributing to the hiring challenges within the industry? Any of you, Sean, if you don't mind kind of kicking us off there.
Sure. And so staffing challenges in the restaurant industry has been around longer than I have. So, but it's just the level of the staffing challenges. Obviously, we, obviously had the benefit of having, obviously a lot of restaurant members and be able to have that deep conversation on what it looks like in our industry. We really did, find that due to the pandemic and due to the multiple closures and the inconsistency within our industry, we're open or closed, that roller coaster effect of going open and closed and open and closed, that inconsistency really drove people, the middle to upper management staff inside of food service establishments, to go to look to other industries because they needed a consistent wage. CERB would not be beneficial or helpful for them, obviously, at their current wage. And so they looked outside of industries. Another thing we found was the competing with federal programs and the lack of accountability in those programs and the lack of adaptability in those programs, because those programs were very flush along across Canada, and they really turned a lot of people into the wait and see type of people. We're going to wait and see if the restaurants stay open if we want to go back to work, and we were really competing with those federal programs. So those were the two major issues that we found that were really causing a lot of the staffing challenges. But what we have done is that we've engaged in a local marketing program that actually just launched yesterday, a massive marketing initiative to try to get people back into this industry, really engage people and show how much fun it is working in the restaurant industry, working in the food service industry. And that is launching through multiple different channels, as print, media, radio, the back of bus benches, people walking them down the street with little signs on, whatever we need to do to engage people to get back into this industry, because it is at a critical point. And I remember those old days when I was a manager at Red Lobster when I was first starting my career, and I used to have to take an entire day off so that I could do interviews, because I'd have so many people applying for positions, and especially service positions. They'd be lined right out the door. And those days are gone, and we really need to know why. And so we're really, as the association, really diving into the cause root of what is causing this, so that we can assist, our industry on being able to maybe, make the necessary changes, or at least have that data so that they can, incorporate that into their operation.
And Melanie or John, what have you been hearing from staff, either trying to get staff back who have maybe been laid off previously, or get folks back into the restaurant? What have you been hearing from staff?
Well, this time of year as well, I mean, we all know that the front end staff are usually part-time, and they worked when they could during the summer, and a lot of them are going back to university now. So the pool has even dried up a little bit more now as far as availability. Everyone, when I was 23, I didn't want to work Friday nights. I would rather work, during the day, during the week kind of thing. But now back to school's dried it up a bit. There was a point where there was, I don't want to call it sort of COVID euphoria when it all happened and everyone didn't have to go to work and it was summer and suddenly they were getting served and they were just enjoying it. We saw like our beer sales for home delivery went up exponentially because there was this sort of, I got a holiday kind of thing. I don't have to work. And then this time last year, I think round 2 happened and people's pants weren't fitting the same way because they had had too much to drink. Their bank account wasn't quite as illustrious as it was a year ago. They couldn't go to work and because things were closed down. So I think sort of the whole idea of looking for other industry might have come up a bit. Like you don't want to get up every morning and wondering if you're going to have a job or not. So that's not a very good feeling. And based on things beyond everyone's control, we were susceptible to, as businesses, staffing shortages. There were many times where, and I know even Ben came in out and helped deliver last year for a day just to get the experience. But we all
For free.
get to pick the 80 hours a week we work as business owners. It's all not that glorious, right? Oh, you own a brewery. Well, okay, that's fun. But yeah, we all pitched in where we had to, and the staff that wanted to work are coming back. The staff that maybe this wasn't for them aren't coming back, and I don't know if they were just got used to this, the comfortableness of sort of government money, but they might find that comes back to haunt them this tax season as well, if they weren't saving up. But staffing, we just went through a whole round of folks that pleasantly have found jobs in their profession. So I can't begrudge them. We have a nurse and a social worker that have gone on to bigger and better things as far as going to school and paying for all that goes. And they were happy, and we miss them because typically they've got the most experience. And as we all know, you never want to train somebody for a month and a half and impart all your knowledge and then have them leave, because that's expensive, that ramp up for all businesses to get people involved and just the procedures. And we all are in the same vein of business, but we all operate a little bit differently. So we just keep up the positive attitude, make it a place that people want to work at. They feel safe and inclusion. And it's just, we just have to, as businesses, work a little harder to sell our sizzle, I guess.
I just want to jump in and kind of jump off that last point you said, John, because like Sean mentioned, high turnover is kind of a constant in this industry. And so maybe what do you think business owners or restaurateurs can be doing better to attract folks to the industry and maybe support or make the working conditions a little bit more attractive for staff post-pandemic? And maybe I'll throw it to you, Melanie.
As far obviously, the way we run our restaurants may not be exactly the same as all of the other ones, but one of the things that we've found to be particularly effective as far as retaining staff is to really show appreciation and really prop them up and support them. And for many of the people that we work with, it's really sort of like a family, and we're all working together towards one common goal. And they feel like it's not just a job to them. It's they're emotionally invested in seeing this succeed. And so I think just really taking the time and supporting them, promoting them, encouraging them in all that they're doing. We haven't had necessarily the turnover that I think a lot of other places are experiencing. Most of our staff are a little bit older and are seasoned professionals as far as, they're not going back to school. This is their job. This is what they do, and I think when you, are bringing people into the fold where you don't have that hierarchy where you're the boss and that they're just an employee, but it's really engaging and everybody's contributing to constant never-ending improvement of the place. I think that engagement is really having a big impact as far as staff or job satisfaction, pardon me.
Great. Is there anyone else that wants to comment on that one before we move on?
I was just going to also say, as businesses, because the staff never really knew what the environment was that they were coming into. So we made an effort to have like a monthly town hall where we shared some of the reasons management made decisions that might have affected them and what we were doing to ensure that they had a job through all of this. Many people were repurposed. We have the front of the staff, but we also have warehouse staff. We have guys on the canning line. We have cellarmen. We've got brewers. We've got drivers. We had part-time staff. We bring in Matt Wolf's father and father-in-law come and help package variety packs just to get out of the house. I'm not sure if their wives are encouraging them to leave, and this is a safe haven for them, but I just found that the staff really appreciated that we weren't making decisions in a vacuum, that we considered every decision we made, and a lot of them were hard. Like for 5 months last year, everyone was on work share. So 50% of the hours, and we had to navigate them through, how do I apply for unemployment insurance? I've never done it before. So just being kind of a sounding board and listening to them. If people were under stress, we understood it. And, we got to know our employees a lot better, and they appreciated sort of the honesty that they weren't just pawns in the bigger picture, that they were an important part of the business, and we value their input. And, you're only as good as the people you hire. So we want to make sure that the people wanted to be here and there wasn't a lot of workplace chatter outside of work. And I just think it was important to be upfront and honest with them. And I think they appreciated that.
Well, I mean, you mentioned sort of people going back to school. There's a lot of sort of change on the horizon, I guess. Patio season is probably going to be winding down in the next few weeks. The slight increase, as you mentioned, in numbers in terms of case counts and stuff, and in addition to what we're seeing in other provinces. A recent survey by Restaurants Canada found 64% of Canadians said dining out will be an important part of their lifestyle post-pandemic. Sean, is it too soon to predict what business might look like heading into cooler months? Like, is there a general trend that you see through the industry, and is it maybe sort of intensified or more or less sort of you think going into this fall?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too soon. I think that obviously with us reopening and starting Burger Week pretty much day one of that reopening, obviously kind of skewed the numbers a little bit, because it's obviously with a theme week, it really brings back, engages a lot of excitement in the industry. I think the real telltale indicator will be in October and November, and so we're going into Christmas season, which is one of our busiest seasons of the year. Where we engage Christmas parties and a lot of those holiday gatherings within our restaurants, and so that's going to pose some challenges, especially with a lack of staffing within our industry. That's why we chose to run our new marketing initiative right away, just so we could really engage that attention of people, and that we're hiring, and that that we're looking for a few good men and women and come out and join our industry and start a career, or part-time, or afford a new car, or pay for university, whatever it is. We're the number one employer of ages 16 to 24. So that's where really our wheelhouse is for employees, for trying to engage to our industry. But I think the real telltale indicator will be that October, mid-October, just really see how much of that special event business we're actually going to be retaining. The Restaurant Canada survey doesn't have a lot of QSR in there, so quick service, and so it's really hard to tell from a full service standpoint of view, or even quick serve and casual dining, that what that's going to look like. And that's going to be a real indicator, and we really need Manitobans to come to table huge for this holiday season. Go out and have that amazing dinner out with your family, that holiday gathering in a restaurant, because we've lost that over 2 years now, and we really need that back, because that's a key point in our industry.
Great.
One of the
things sorry, Melanie, go ahead.
One of the things that I have found is that our guests are very responsive to sort of the public health messaging. And I know last year when we went into Code Orange, all of a sudden we saw our guest count and our sales drop by about half. And that was before things were even shut down. So, there definitely needs to be sort of aligned messaging. If the province is still saying to everybody, stay home, stay home, stay home, guess what? They're going to stay home. What really at the end of the day, say restaurants are one of the safest places where you can socialize with your friends or family. It's in a controlled and regulated environment. You have your distancing, you have your masking, you have your double vax, requirements. And really that's one of the best places that you could safely, socialize with your friends and family. And so sort of aligning that messaging as far as, that it is controlled, it is regulated, it is safe, and you can enjoy this, and this, it is not a dangerous thing to be doing anymore. Not that I necessarily think it ever was, but it's we find that our guests are very responsive to public health messaging. And you could have very low cases. You go from, let's say, 30 cases a day to 100, and the messaging is, the caseload has tripled, and this sort of thing, when it's like, well, we still have relatively low numbers, and there's all these other safeguards in place. So I think that so long as the emphasis is on it being that safe environment where you can, enjoy the company of your friends and family, I think that we'll see a good, fall and holiday season.
Mm-hmm. Melanie, just sort of to stay with you for a second, you Preservation Hall opened during the pandemic. Obviously, that was not the plan when it happened, but can you just talk a little bit about that experience and what that was like for you and your partner / chef Tristan?
Well, it obviously particularly challenging to open in the middle of a pandemic, but we were actually supposed to open of March 2020, and then obviously that got pushed back because of the first shutdown. But at the point where COVID came to Winnipeg, we were already all in. Our renovations had been completed. We were at the point of hiring staff. It was truly too late to turn back. So as far as the first shutdown happened, we were like, okay, we'll just defer things for a little bit. And we actually waited until phase 3 of reopening. Our first day open was June 26th of 2020, because at that time, the case numbers were so low. And we were like, okay, things seem safe. Things aren't going to shut down again. Of course, hindsight's always 2020. And that was the first of several shutdowns. And, thanks to a loyal following of regular guests, they really did support us during those extremely challenging times. Part of the biggest thing for us is because we were a new restaurant, we didn't qualify for most government programs because we couldn't show a loss of sales from 2019 as a new business. So there were a few things here and there, initiative by the city, also the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund. We were able to tap into that, but primarily most of the programs we didn't qualify for. So big shout out to our loyal guests for keeping us going. But no, it's been quite the year, and you keep pivoting and shifting and adapting to the current climate and situation. But if we can make it through the last 18 months, we can make it through anything.
Melanie, that's actually a good segue to kind of our last question before we get into some reader submitted questions. And this is kind of touch on what kind of support needs to happen going forward. So what is needed right now to help the food and beverage industry rebound in the short term and then also survive in the long run? And maybe Sean, if you want to kind of start us off with that one.
I would actually prefer to listen to the two business owners before.
Okay, sure. And so John or Melanie, if you'd like to comment on that.
Well, one of the part of the collateral damage of being in the beer business is when all your customers shut down and they're not allowed to go back for months and months, we are left with, when they reopen, figuring out what to do with full or partial kegs that they already purchased. They would like a refund. They would like a credit. They would like something done with the beer. So at some point, I joked with my friends at the MBLL that there should have been some sort of program for brewers that would help absorb some of these credits, because it was almost a double-edged sword, because you sold it and you enjoyed the revenue that came with it, and now you got to return it, and it's on the brewer to ensure that our customers are happy, because my reps go to a lot of work to build relationships, and I'm not going to lose somebody's business over half a keg that we won't credit. So we end up just hoping that the keg return tsunami is, I think most folks are open now. We have a few stragglers, and that we will go out of our way to ensure that they're happy. So some of the support could have come maybe at seeing some of the ramifications down the supply chain on how it impacts businesses. I just felt for sure on the keg side of the things, we were the last one standing when the music stopped, and there weren't any chairs for us to sit down on. So, and that would have happened with all the brewers, right? We've all made big impacts. When I was president of the MBBA, we were at about 5% local business in Manitoba for beer sales. I believe it's creeping up to 7.5 or 8. I think that has to do with both the acceptance and the number of local brewers making great beer that were offering choices. And especially during the pandemic, folks were turning to locals whenever they could. I know lots of folks in the restaurant business that just basically had to figure out how to get home deliveries, because the third-party delivery services were just taking all their profit. So they figured out how to build online delivery systems and get food to the people that were their customers that just couldn't make it out to them. So on the support side, I think we're done. I hope. I don't know what else could be done other than, dealing with this. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a politician during this pandemic. I feel it's like trying to change a tire on a moving car. Like, there's all kinds of moving parts that you don't know what's happening next, and they're doing their best. Hindsight's always 2020, especially with pandemics and disasters. It was always, well, we could have done this better, but we didn't know we had to do that better, but we will do that better next time. So hopefully we don't have to go through this again. But the support we got, I felt, if you knew how to navigate the labyrinth of grants and money for businesses, maybe I wasn't involved in all of that, but I don't know if there was like a resource for business going forward, like a handbook, if this happens, who to call, who to send an email to, so you're not getting auto replies or no answers. This is something that would be more in place for us as a roadmap for reaching the resources we need to when we need to reach them.
The greatest support that I can see for restaurants and others in this industry is just doing whatever it takes to stay open, because really at the end of the day, no amount of government support or guaranteed loan is ever going to recover the loss in sales that would happen if restaurants were to shut down again. With our business, we found during the lockdowns, we were down about 90% of our revenue that was coming in each month. So whatever we can do to stay open, that's really the best course for the industry. And if it is continuing with, making sure people are double vaxxed, or, making sure we're still 6 foot distancing and wearing masks, that's what we need to do to stay open. And that's the best support that we can have. We can't put a Band-Aid on a broken dam.
Right. And Sean, maybe I'll just add to your kind of follow up to this, because we got this question from a reader regarding the vaccinated only guests. And like you said earlier, any kind of restriction is going to put a dent in revenue. Do you think the government should be supplying any kind of funds to offset maybe the loss of guests from folks that are only being able to serve fully vaccinated customers?
I would say the government relations for our industry and obviously a key relationships during the pandemic. Obviously, I worked very closely both with federal and the provincial government on just exactly this. We were recently able to speak with Aaron O'Toole as part of prior to the election being called on what we would be looking for in an industry, and things like supporting local and tax subsidies for people to engage in restaurants. He recently actually announced that he would be implementing a 50% tax credit for restaurant meals for the first 3 months that we'd be out of the pandemic as an initiative to support our industry. And that I would hope that came from some of our conversations, because it sounds very close to what we actually offered up as a potential suggestion. So, but from a provincial standpoint of view, we had, obviously, there isn't enough subsidies. Melanie's totally right. There isn't enough Band-Aids at every Shoppers Drug Mart in this province to be able to put on the hurts that our industry has felt during this time. A recent survey showed that the average restaurant owner that we had surveyed was about $140,000 in COVID debt. And that, again, 4.3% profit takes a long time to pay that back. So there's enough subsidies out there. And I agree, Melanie, the reality is that we need to get back to the new normal. We need to get back to a point where restaurants can be successful and brewers can be successful. They can sell their wares and we can, supply that to our customers. And that is in messaging. It is in messaging from our provincial government, from our health representatives, and from us back to Manitoba, saying, look, it's always been safe to be in a restaurant. It is even more safe now with barriers and social distancing and all the different PPE that we have in place and habits that we've had to obtain over the last 18 months to even stay open. We're still retaining a lot of that, which if you look at a lot of other industries, you're not seeing. So I'm very proud to sit here and say that I can go out to a restaurant, even see a safer environment than even when we were in the pandemic. So that's what we're looking at. And we're always talking to government about potential assistance, obviously with the loss, but we're also looking for messaging. And that's how we're really pushing, is trying to help them partner with us to get that messaging to Manitobans that it has never been safer to go to a restaurant. Get out now, because this is the time we can do this all in a really fun and encouraging, positive, safe environment.
Excellent. And so now we've got about 8 minutes left now, and we're going to get into some of our reader submitted questions. So Sean, I'm actually going to keep the spotlight on you for a second. This came via email. So you're the head of the Restaurant Association, and like you said, you've got a lot of connections with government and kind of talking to them about what's best for the industry. So this reader was curious, in hindsight, do you think the association could have been more proactive in working with the provincial government on sector-specific reopening plans?
I appreciate the question, and I think it's very a good question. Could we have been more proactive? And I honestly think that we actually did a fabulous job. And the reality is that a lot of the work that we do with government is not advertised. We're not out there, advertising every meeting, every conversation, every time we are included. I will say that during the third and the latest changes to the health order is the most that we've ever been involved in the government's decision in pandemic restrictions and what their plan is for moving forward. I meet weekly with the Minister of Jobs and Development and Health, and I have for 14 months. And so being able to have that conversations, and in every one of those meetings, I voice the concerns that my members and the industry and people just like this who are submitting these questions have to our health officials. But I have to make it very clear that the government has made a lot of decisions during the pandemic that we were not in favor of, and that we had counteractive retrospect opinions of. So they're going to do what they need to do based on their opinions and their decisions. And we are only just one voice. And we need Manitobans to use their voice with the government when they have opinions such as this, because more voices gets better results.
Great. And I think we probably have time for one more question from a reader. I don't know, Ben, if you want to pick one at random.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So you talking about that, and the surveys that they would put out, on a regular basis, see what people wanted and stuff. Sometimes, it felt like while they're leaving the decisions to, the average Manitobans, when the health officials should be, making these decisions themselves. But I can see how how some of that would be helpful in them hearing from Manitobans about, wanting to go back and dining out and stuff like that. I guess one question we had, what changes do you anticipate consumers will be making to their dining, or in the case of John, beverage consuming plans as we head into the new normal. The Restaurants Canada survey mentioned consumers are twice as likely to order delivery direct from a restaurant, or probably in John's case from a brewery, via a third-party app. Will the takeout and delivery sort of component, well, is that here to stay now? And is it going to continue in as popular of a way as it has over the last 18 months?
Yeah, so delivery and takeout used to represent 20% of our business, and during the pandemic, it was 80%. And so, obviously, by having that revenue stream really outlined as our only revenue stream, it really did bring that ability to Manitobans that obviously couldn't go to a restaurant because we were closed, and being able to utilize the convenience of that. I'm a dine-in guy, and really I joined the restaurant industry at 14 years old, worked through the majority of my career because I love restaurants. I like going out, like hanging out with my family and friends, having a great steak and talking about what's happening over the week. So I'm not a takeout guy. But what I will say is that there is never been more options for consumers to be able to locate and get these wares in a more convenient manner. But what we would really like to do is really try to emphasize that there's many options out there that an operator can use to try to get their wares to that consumer that are cost effective. Third-party delivery services are very expensive, and they can, really cut into the bottom line of an operation, especially as you start to increase that takeout and delivery revenue stream. So there are multiple levels out there. We recently purchased Let's Order.delivery, which is a website that was created during the pandemic to help. And we actually provide that to our membership free. And they can offer their delivery services to the geographical area that they're in and advertise it on our website. And actually we had over 35,000 hits in 2 months when it was created. So we really looking towards in the future to trying to get these services available to Manitobans because we know they like them, but really trying to do it in a manner that's going to be conducive to the survival of our industry and our operators.
And Melanie, your thoughts on kind of how diners are choosing to engage with restaurants via delivery and takeout and things like that?
Well, I think that delivery and takeout is still a great option for people that maybe their comfort level as far as assumption of level of risk in going out just in general is, they're not comfortable with any sort of risk, right? And so having that option for curbside pickup, delivery, we have people that are literally ordering every single week, and so it's nice to be able to have that option for them. I find the majority of our guests are interested in that dining experience and having the dishes described or recommendations made or the pairing that is suggested with a certain meal. So I think that there will always be a place for that, but it's definitely the curbside pickup, the delivery, that's still going to continue on, in the foreseeable future. Not everyone feels as comfortable going out yet, and it's a way of still being able to feed and nourish our guests in a way that they feel comfortable with.
And John, in your industry, it's a little bit different, obviously, because you're talking about a prepackaged product and what have you. And also the markup system is a little bit different because, if people are buying directly from the brewery, there is essentially no markup, and you're able to reap all of that profit and sort of help the industry, help your business survive versus, obviously it's great to have, your beer in lounges and in liquor marts and beer vendors and stuff like that. But, the pivot to delivery and specifically delivery from the brewery itself versus a third party app or something like that must have been quite important, I would think.
It was. There was a point, I think, a year ago, March, we did 90 deliveries in one day. That kind of trickled off. We're always, drinking a beer in the tap room is nice. Drinking a beer at your favorite restaurant or bar is nice. We're fortunate in that we're consistently, it's the same beer in the same package. There isn't sort of that, the presentation of food, the ambience, the music, the staff, the smells of a restaurant. We're fortunate that you could pick up our product at hundreds of different locations, whether it was a beer vendor or a liquor mart, knowing that the experience at the time will have to be in on your deck or in your living room, but we didn't have to rely on, was the food hot? Is it, this shouldn't be in a clamshell. This is supposed to be on porcelain, and it should be, lit by candle. And this isn't what we wanted to do, but I hope people understand that. But we did. I mean, we had basically, other than the tap room, we are in the takeout business. We've got. We do make a little bit more if people come to the tap room, which we were open just for pickup during the pandemic and home delivery. We used to do delivery every day, and we used to have 8 to 10 deliveries every day. And now we do it twice a week. And I could count on one hand home delivery right now, just because people can go to the liquor mart, they can collect air miles if something's going on with our product, they can go to their favorite beer vendor. And we've actually made some stronger relationships with our retail outlets during the pandemic, because we had to get creative with pushing traffic to them. And hopefully we've gained some new customers during all of this. But as far as the takeout and delivery, it isn't a big thing for us. It was, obviously, because it was the only thing we had going on. And we've gained some new customers, but we ultimately would love people back in the tap room, experience the whole reason tap rooms were built, and that was to enjoy small batch beer that isn't available in a packaged product. So that is the true experience of coming to Torque. You can enjoy, marmalade best bitter that isn't available anywhere else other than the tap room. If you want our red line, you can probably get it in 100 different places around town, but that's not what tap rooms were built for. Unfortunately, as well, we have sort of an open beer hall style, and with social distancing, I think we wore out 15 tape measures, just making sure that the tables were the right distance from each other. And if I have to put one more taped arrow on the floor, it'll be too soon. But takeout and delivery, it really was something we had to lean on initially, but now it sort of faded into the background, and we encourage pickup in the tap room.
Excellent. And hopefully indoor dining and all that sticks around for the foreseeable future, and we don't have another lockdown on our hands.
Forever.
We're just going to, yes, forever. Let's hope. Thank you so much, everybody, for the wide-ranging conversation. It's really nice to have all your perspectives. So really appreciate you joining us. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a wrap up. Our next reopening town hall, virtual town hall, is next Wednesday, September 22nd, and the topic is sports and COVID-19. So Winnipeg Free Press reporter sports editor Steve Lyons and reporter Mike McIntyre will be chatting with Wade Miller from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Janet McMahon from Sport Manitoba. And you can register to watch at eventbrite.ca. And I think we're plopping links into the chat that's going on YouTube right now as well. And also, I just want to invite everybody to subscribe to Dish, which is a bi-weekly food and drink newsletter that Ben and I put together. The next one is going to be coming out Friday. And so hope you'll sign up. And it's all about kind of like what's happening with restaurants and the drinks industry in Winnipeg. So please join us. Thank you again for everybody who tuned in.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I was going to say, Sean, John, and Melanie, thank you so much for participating and for sharing your experiences. Over the last 18 months, it's been, hopefully we don't ever have to do this again. No offense.
Agreed.